Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be joining us from today. And welcome to our fireside chat about how the disability conversation is changing. Discussing this huge topic with me today is Mike Adams, OBE, who is Purple's Chief Executive and creator of the pioneering Purple Tuesday movement and #1 brand working to improve the disabled customer experience worldwide. Joining us is Isaac Harvey, who is one of the UK's most influential disabled young people and rising social media stars. He is an avid disability advocate, the president of Wheels and Wheelchairs, which is an outdoor sports club where roller skaters push wheelchair users, and an accomplished videographer. His lived experience and perceptions will be invaluable to the conversation today. And finally, joining us is Harriet Jamieson, who is the social value lead at Allwyn UK, who are part of Allwyn, Europe's largest and most successful national lottery operator. I look forward to learning from Harriet how Allwyn UK have approached disability inclusion. But the session today is also about you, and it involves you, our audience. We want you to be as interactive and with us as possible. So get your questions down into the chat box. I have a team here who is in the background monitoring all the questions as they come in. And we will do our best to get to as many as we can through the session and at the allocated Q&A section after the guests have spoken. So without further ado, let the discussions get kicked off with Mike. Hi, Mike.
Good afternoon, Charlene.
Oh, sorry. Good afternoon. Mike, why purple?
Well, and thank you. Just to say, having looked at the comments, there is no presentation. There is no death by PowerPoint. This is just a fireside chat. So don't worry, everyone. Why purple? Well, purple talk about changing the disability conversation. We talk about the one where the traditional focus has been on seeing disability about being charity, about vulnerable people, welfare, and the responsibility of government. And we're moving that dial with others to one about contribution, community, shared responsibility, and opportunity. And our starting point in kind of bucking convention, if as it were, was the purple pound, the 274 billion consumer spending power, or globally $8 trillion. And we saw that, and we see that as the way to engage businesses in driving and owning the changes with our support and the support of the disability community. And I think in the world that we currently live in terms of COVID, Purple has been able to tack back a little bit in terms of talking just about a commercial opportunity to one which is about commercial and the social impact issue. And we've seen that staff in organisations are starting to expect the brands for whom they work for to think about inclusion, diversity, disability. Customers are starting to vote with their feet and on social media about brands they want to be associated with. And investors are now seeing ESG as a must-see. And I think my conclusion is why purple? Well, one, there is an absolute intent out there, but people need the solutions. And you and I recently, Charlene, did something with the property sector that said we want to do something, but we don't know how to do it and we don't know what the metrics are. And I think where purple come from is that we utilize the lived experience of disabled people as our most valuable raw material. And I hope people think that we are really authentic. And we want to take everyone on the disability inclusion journey, wherever their starting point and at the pace that they feel comfortable going it. And we are starting to see visible changes. The disability conversation is changing. And two very brief examples for which, by the way, we absolutely take no credit for at all, but as a barometer, is the amount of adverts I now see every night on TV that is involving disabled people with a different range of impairments. And why? Because it connects, it works, and it resonates. And the other example is England cricket captain. His first interview, Ben Stokes, as cricket captain, was all about his mental health. And I'm not sure even 3 years ago that would have even been discussed. A long way to go, but I think we're getting there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, you're talking about time. So you often say it has taken so much time. So, on your opinion, Mike, what have been the key barriers, the key challenges for that time lag that is existing there?
Charlene, you've worked with me for far too long. I am a really, really impatient, and I want everything absolutely done yesterday, and everything is a priority. I want that change to be absolute permanent. And I think in terms of barriers or challenges, perversely, the world recognizes the international symbol, the wheelchair, which has done so much for disability and raising its profile, but perversely, it's kind of really narrowly defined people's initial understanding and perception of disability. And in some ways, it would personified me. When I go out, I use a wheelchair. I'm 8% of the disabled population who do that. Whereas the reality is 80% of disabled people have hidden impairments, neurodiversity, later diagnosis. And we saw a brilliant webinar last month about diagnosis of neurodiversity in older kind of life and living with cancer. So the umbrella, the kind of definition of disability is changing, and people's understanding of accessibility is also changing, and particularly with the drive on in terms of online accessibility. But you only have to think back to the day of Purple Tuesday last November, which was COP26, and the absolute embarrassment where the Israeli minister, who was a wheelchair user, couldn't get into the building because they had forgotten to think about ramps and lifts. So all those kind of concrete, those platform things are increasingly important. And I think generally there is a wider social awareness that has been accelerated, I think, a little bit by COVID, particularly around mental health in the workplace, which perhaps 3 years ago was a relatively taboo subject still. And people have been exposed in their families who never thought they would experience it or see someone experience who have. And that changes people's minds rapidly.
No, absolutely. So, I think both you and I would agree that we're confident now that we've got real traction. So what have been the key factors in getting the traction that has been very much needed?
No, absolutely. Just go back to a point that I've just seen flashing up. Having a ramp doesn't make you accessible. Absolutely. And I think this is the real point about understanding people who are first and foremost, I am a customer, I am a consumer who happens to have a disability, I am an employee who is absolutely talented and has skills who happen to have a disability. And I think back to your question about traction is exactly that understanding that accessibility is not about just ramps, it's not about lifts, it's not about signage, it's not about simply, oh, we'll have a quiet hour. Actually, it suits us for the quiet hour to be on a 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. But actually, if you understand anything about some of the chaotic lives of people on the kind of autistic spectrum, it never will work. And those organisations who understood that and have moved quiet hours to 2 o'clock on a Wednesday or Thursday afternoon have seen such a spike. So it's not only about interventions, but it's about the right interventions coupled with just common sense and seeing the person first. And just look at the numbers today. I know there was near enough 700 people who signed up for this, and I know I know how many people because I've been to the toilet 3 times in the last 20 minutes. So I know the number of people. That wouldn't have happened 3 years ago. We wouldn't have had that. You know, we've seen initiatives like the Valuable 500 that has got 500 corporate organisations getting disability on the agenda. Advertising industries, that the adverts that I've just talked about, and the younger generation. And it would be brilliant to talk to Isaac in a minute, but who are just demanding and expecting changes. You know, when I was growing up, if there was any kind of win and I had access to a building that I'd not previously, we saw that as a real win. Not anymore. Not anymore. This is about expecting and demanding that. So, and it was interesting, Charlene. We did a youth video not long ago, where one of the younger people said, "One day we will be running this town, but I can't be battling with mops." And what they meant was they are the next generation, but they don't want to go into shopping centres and other places and need an accessible toilet and end up not being able to get in there because it's mops and buckets as a storage room. So I think there's a lot of traction. 2 words of warning: we need to go faster. Don't believe that we are there, because otherwise it becomes a tick box answer. And I think, and I'm starting to see, if we're not careful, new accessibility barriers, online accessibility barriers being created that do not need to be there. And it's kind of startling and stark that 3% of the top 1 million websites still do not meet basic accessibility standards.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you touched on a fantastic campaign, the Valuable 500, and engaging with, you know, at board level and cascading that message down. And, you know, just if you wanted to share a little bit around, you know, Purple Tuesday and your vision for Purple Tuesday, and how that got off the ground, and where you want to see that sort of progress in the incoming years, Mike.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if people have heard this story 30, 40 times before, but it's really important that, you know, only 5 years ago, and my partner and I went Christmas shopping, which I have to admit to everyone, I can't stand, and I try and do it all in one day. And we went to a shopping centre, and we unscientifically visited 27 shops in that shopping centre on that one day. And in 23 of those 27 shops, the frontline staff either totally ignored us or only spoke to my non-disabled partner. And we kind of worked out that their response wasn't about direct discrimination per se, but it was this fear, this worry of unintentionally offending me by doing the wrong thing or saying the wrong thing. And so the answer was to avoid and swerve the conversation altogether. But to be honest, that didn't make me feel a valued customer. It didn't make me feel a customer at all. And it certainly didn't make me spend my purple pound. And then 5 years later, I think people get it. I think businesses get it. And all we're asking for is that Purple Tuesday is the solution, I think, for businesses to engage on accessibility for their bottom line, for building their customer base. And quite frankly, if you play in a business to consumer world, customer service is your raison d'etre. And we are simply supporting organizations to make commitments and to follow those commitments through. And we purposefully created Purple Tuesday as a really low bar, as a free initiative, because we just wanted to have a mass of organizations who started on that journey, who then said, well, that's straightforward, we can do more than that. And have started, and we've seen all sorts of really big changes that have taken place. But I remember, Charlene, the first conference I did to introduce Purple Tuesday, and there was about 400 people in the audience, and I had 2 questions at the end, both from disabled people, that said, we are really worried. We are worried that businesses will see Purple Tuesday as a way to make the issue really tokenistic, and that disability becomes a once a year commitment that we have to make. And those words have stayed with me all the way through and endured. And Purple Tuesday is about what organisations do 365 days of the year, not just on one day. And the other element was that Purple Tuesday needed to be owned by disabled people and disabled customers. And so we've created disabled customer ambassadors, and that's probably my segue, Charlene, to go from being interviewed to being the host, and for me to introduce Isaac. You said a few words at the start, so I'm going to just jump straight into it. Good afternoon, Isaac, and it would be great.
Hello.
It would be great if you could tell us a bit about Wheels and Wheelchairs and how it is helping to change the disability conversation.
Sure. So, thank you for letting me to be here today, and talk to so many people who have joined us today. So I'm Isaac, born with a disability called limb pelvic hypoplasia, which means I have no arms and short legs. But this hasn't stopped me from doing loads of adventurous things, such as you mentioned, the Wheels and Wheelchairs, which I'm the president of, and it's an outdoor activity sports club where wheelchair users are pushed by roller skaters. And I feel that is really changing the conversation, because I didn't even know before I even joined it was a thing that could be done. And it just shows that the way things have been moving, we're able to do things such as roller skating. Like, who would have guessed that 20, 30 years ago that would be participating during roller skating? And all the other activities that I'm part of. I mean, talking about how the conversations change. I mean, even for me, before I joined LinkedIn a year ago, I thought that I've been living in a bubble for so long, because I didn't know there were so many people within the disability community doing so many awesome things, like you, Mike, Victoria from Unhidden, there's Kat, Martin Sibley from the Purple Goat Agency. I mean, there's so many people who are doing so many amazing things. It's even opened my eyes, and how the conversation is shifting a lot far rapidly than people do think. Well, as we realize, it's just going at a rapid pace, and people are collaborating and doing changes which are really changing the world we see today.
No, absolutely. And listen, this is our first ever live event on LinkedIn, and there are so many messages I cannot keep track, but I know I know there's some accessibility issues, and if there are, I really apologize, and we need to fix them, because that is incredibly important, and we need to talk to LinkedIn as well, because this is such a great medium for bringing people together. And as Charlene said at the absolute start, Isaac, you have literally taken LinkedIn by storm. And I remember my intro to you was seeing this guy. It looks quite similar to me, by the way, wearing purple socks on Purple Tuesday. And I don't think you've ever looked back. And I think I've seen something that says you've had 3 or 4 posts that have had over 7 million kind of looks at. And by the way, I have not. So can you let me, and we can do this offline if you like, but can you let me and the rest of us know what your kind of secret stardust is, please, and how you use LinkedIn to kind of tell your story to resonate with others?
I'll have to send everyone an invoice afterwards after I share the secret. But I think, because like you said, a lot of people who have been on LinkedIn much longer that I've connected with asked me the same question. How did you do that? And it's one of those things where I feel it's just me being honest and sharing my story of how it is, because I like to share it positively or negatively, basically showing how human I am as everybody else. And I think people can relate to that honesty, while also learning about disability in the process. I mean, sometimes it's overcoming things with your mind, and the way you perceive things. I mean, that's something everyone can really relate to, when it comes to overcoming challenges, but also talking about disability within that, as we said, it's becoming a more of a talking subject. Mix that together, and I think that's how I've got that formula. Of course, you got to do the algorithm things like hashtags and all of that, but I think just having an honest story with a good picture of what you're talking about is the where you get the most impact from people.
So yeah, so I mean, my kind of take on this is you are so authentic, and
Mm,
you tell the story in a way that resonates with other individuals, and a great visual,
mm,
and you understand how the LinkedIn algorithms work as well. And actually, what you bring to people's phone or device is your life, and the fact that others can do it. And we talked about, I think I mentioned, a quote from a young person that said, one day we are going to run this town, we are the next generation, but I don't want to be fighting my way through mops. And I just, from your perspective,
mm.
what do you think the expectations and demands are from this younger generation and the leaders of tomorrow?
I feel the expectations is that we, well, as young people, should be able to do whatever is out there. Um, and I feel if it's not there that are able to do it, then you're discriminating someone as a human. Um, and I feel that's why it's good, and it shouldn't be a thing, but we have all of these people within the disability community enabling those to do it. Obviously, it should be a thing that, for example, skiing should just be skiing rather than adaptive skiing, or like the roller skating. I mean, just to join us roller skating, I feel it's it should just be one of those things where disabled people should be able to do what they want when they want to do it, and have the flexibility of um, allowing their needs to be put in place. So, for example, if people need to take time off to do these things and can't do it in long stretches, they should also have that flexibility to be able to participate. Because, as I said, it's otherwise seen as a discrimination on a human from doing whatever they want to do.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And so it's about the individuals, it's about mindset, but it's also about the environment. And I've
Mm.
just seen fly past a comment from someone who lives in Breda, I think that's how you pronounce it, in Holland, who have made their town more accessible, which is fantastic. And one, because it's the right thing to do, but two, it's just in this modern day, what it's just an absolute non-negotiable thing that needs to be
Mm.
happen, and they become the template town for others simply to follow. I just wanted to briefly touch on the fact that thank you so much for becoming a Purple Tuesday disabled customer ambassador. This is where we need to get to in the evolution. Purple Tuesday need to be owned by disabled people, supporting businesses. And what's your key message to people listening today who might be thinking about whether they're going to get involved with Purple Tuesday this year?
I think it's when I first heard about it, I thought, why has this not been done for a while? I mean, it's important that most, like all businesses, do get involved in this, because you're losing out on customers, and it's also realizing that everyone can experience some sort of disability in their lives. So technically, you're tailoring for everyone by being part of the Purple Tuesday movement, because anything can happen to anyone at any given time. So you want to be accessible from the get-go so that you know that all of your customers, no matter disability or not, can access and be able to be part of your business.
Absolutely. And by access, we are talking in the broadest sense.
Oh, yes.
We absolutely now live in a blended world, whether we like it or not, and access is face to face and online, and you have to do both. So absolutely brilliant. And just if you take for one moment and put Purple Tuesday to one side, so for the people listening today, what one piece of advice would you give them about how they can contribute in changing the conversation, the disability conversation?
Sorry, say the question again.
So just one bit of advice to everyone out there. What would you say to them? What do they need to go away today and do that will help to contribute to changing the disability conversation?
By joining the conversation. I think that's the most important thing. Join in and tell others about this conversation and get people speaking about it, because once we finish here, we want the conversation to keep going on until many years ahead, because we're doing this for the young people, we're doing this for the old people, we're doing it for everybody. So the conversation should be continuous and it should be something that everyone's involved in.
No, absolutely. And as Paul has just said, great stuff, Isaac. Choice and control through empowerment. I don't think I could put it any better myself. And I think just wanted to make the point, when we talk about disabled people, we talk about and their networks. So whether that's family, whether that's carers, whether that's friends, and just the huge ripple effect that goes with understanding accessibility and the disability conversation. So thank you ever so much, Isaac. I'm now going to hand back to Charlene, who's going to talk to Harriet.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Isaac. I think looking at the comments, it's been extremely powerful, the messages you've got across. Hello, Harriet, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Charlene. Nice to be here.
Fantastic. So Alwyn, we had the great pleasure of having you as our Lottery Purple Tuesday sector partner last year, and fingers crossed this year as well. But it'd be really good to hear, how, what was the value of the partnership for you?
Yeah, great. And thank you so much, Charlene and Mike, for having us as part of this conversation. I'll just quickly touch on the fact that our status at the moment is that we are a preferred applicant for the National Lottery here in the UK. So while I can't talk specifically about what we put in our bid to run the National Lottery, we've got loads of lottery experience. I'm going to talk sort of more broadly from that experience, if that's okay. But as you say, Allwyn UK, we joined as the lottery sector partner last year. So we had our bid chair, Sir Keith Mills, who came along last year to announce our partnership. And I mean, on the day, it was just great to be there with your 15 other sector partners and to share experience and best practice as we really start this journey. So to be clear, Allwyn UK is being established recently here in the UK, even though we run lotteries across Europe. So we are at the start of that journey. And so what it did, I'd say, was firstly, it sent a real message to our team, anyone interested in Allwyn or the lottery sector more broadly, about how important it is to remove barriers for people with disabilities, whether as a customer, as an employee. And we really want to sort of lead this way in the lottery space. But it really kicked off the conversation internally in Allwyn. So I'm the social value lead here at Allwyn, but there's no point it just being me banging the drum about disability inclusion. So this sent a really clear message that this is something that we need to look at across all aspects of our business, our products, our brand, really the sort of our culture and who we are. And I think where lottery can be quite interesting in this space is it touches so many different facets of life. So you've got all your sort of usual business departments, your marketing, your finance, your HR, all of which are really important when we're talking about tackling some of these barriers. But we've also got a lottery product that many people know of or access, whether you access that digitally, whether you access that through going to your local shop. And so there's so many different touch points within Allwyn and within lotteries where we can really make a difference here in removing some of the barriers and moving that conversation on. And I think that's the bit I'm really excited about.
No, absolutely. And we always say here in Purple, lived experience is our biggest raw material. So tell us a little bit about how the lived experience has driven Allwyn's senior leadership team in particular.
Yeah, that's been an interesting one. I would say lived experience more generally has been sort of part of our philosophy, sort of within disability, but more broadly than that, we really want to use lived experience to help us sort of understand the challenges that we are addressing and come up with the right solutions as well. So I'd say we knew from the outset in setting up Allwyn that we wanted to make ourselves and our products as accessible and inclusive as was possible. But it was when I started talking about it with our senior leadership team, I had this sort of light bulb moment when I realized how many people in our senior team had direct experience of living with disability or had an immediate family member who lived with a disability, and how this affected their own values and their own way of thinking. And it's so powerful to work with a team who can translate those everyday barriers or the challenges they face, because they've been facing them for years, whether as a consumer or whether as an employee or as an employer. So our CEO, Allwyn's CEO, has a daughter who was born with sensory neural deafness. And she's been open talking about how that has affected her throughout her own education, and now as she enters into the career space. And it's created numerous challenges for her and for her family. And I think for our CEO, therefore, he's very open that his core beliefs around breaking down those barriers is absolutely mirrored in Allwyn's values and how we want to approach this as an organization. And I find that very powerful. It's also very inspiring to have a team who can speak from their own personal experience and knowledge.
Well, absolutely. There was a piece of work that we've done here in the UK with KPMG called Leading from the Front. And, if you do have leaders who have an understanding, the lived experience of disability and how that helps drive the agenda. And I suppose then that has obviously directly impacted how disability inclusion has fitted into your wider diversity values. Do you want to, maybe explain a little bit more about how you've approached that?
Yeah, so we say that Allwyn builds lotteries for all, for everyone, no matter your background, your personal circumstances, whether you have a disability or not. It's our mission to ensure that we can use lotteries as a way to sort of increase accessibility and opportunities across the societies where we work. So one of our goals, ambitious, is to create one of the most inclusive organisations in the UK. We are at the start of that journey as Allwyn, and disability inclusion is such a huge part of this. And I mean, the evidence is plain to see, and I don't think anyone who's on this call won't know much of that evidence about why you need a diverse workforce, whether that's higher levels of productivity, high levels of innovation, faster problem solving, better customer understanding. And so for a company that is currently quite small, we're less than 50 people, but will grow very rapidly as we plan to take over the running of the National Lottery. It's really vital that we get this right from the start. And so we've got a real opportunity as a company that is on that sort of very fast growth trajectory to build that into our processes, whether that's recruitment or all across the business, right from the start. And also, we want to be ambitious. The next lottery license, so the fourth national lottery license, it's a 10-year license period. So we've got the time and to really be ambitious with our targets as well.
No, absolutely, definitely. And so with that all in mind, what would you say has been the best bit of good practice that you have heard about on your journey so far? It's a big question.
There's so much out there. I guess I've been talking quite a lot about the sort of internal within Allwyn and what we can do. A major way that we work as a lottery operator is to collaborate, to work through partnerships. Lotteries tend to have fairly substantial supply chains. They work through thousands of retailers who stock a lot of their lottery products, for example. So I think if we really want to change the conversation on disability, it has to go beyond your own organization. We need to start by getting it right within our own organization, and that's what we're trying to do. But when you can start having that conversation with your supply chain, with the regulator who oversees us, for example, and really collaborate and listen to where they're at on their journey, I think that's where you start to see some really exciting change. And obviously working with Purple, we're doing a lot of listening to Purple as well. So that's about creating a supportive environment to have that conversation, a very open conversation, supporting with the right tools. And then it's also about the sort of day-to-day, it's including it in your policies. So whether that is your procurement policy or your supplier code of conduct, to make sure that that is being factored in, for example, when you go to a tender process.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And I couldn't put it better myself, absolutely leading and showing and demonstrating that it can be done, but also encouraging those that you have direct relationships within your network to join, get on the bus, so to speak, and be part of the change and be part of the movement. Definitely. Thanks. And for people and organizations listening today who have started out on their own journey themselves, what would be the one piece of advice that you would give them, Harriet?
So I'm saying this as a social value lead. I think it's about speaking your colleagues' language. Not everyone will speak the same language in this. Some people will want to look at tackling those barriers because it's the right thing to do. But some you'll need to show how it meets their own targets or their own priorities that they've set. So is this about increasing employee loyalty and retention? Is it around improving your overall reputation, making sure that you're living by the values that you set out? So I think myth busting goes quite a long way in doing this. So I don't know, around the perceived cost of workplace adjustments, for example. Yeah. Whereas for others, it's going back to Mike's earlier point of the strength of the Purple Pound. There's amazing statistics that Purple have got and that we can share around that strength of the Purple Pound. And so the more that you've got your team getting around sort of thinking creatively about how you tackle those barriers and what the solutions might be, and going back to that point about people with lived experience, the more they are part of or leading those conversations, I think the more you're going to see it embedded. It's got to move out of staying in sort of one area of your business, and it's got to really filter across your business.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much. That has been extremely useful. I'm now going to go to some of the questions that come through, and wow, there has just been so many that bear with me while I try to pull these through, and I'm going to open them up to the panel, and between you can decide who is best to answer, who's best placed to answer. I think there's one here, and I think this is quite a good one. Are there any low-cost, low-hanging fruit options for businesses to improve their accessibility?
Shall I start with that? Absolutely, there is. And just to go back to like the cost of accessibility, if you look at Access to Work funding, I think the average price is £79. So a lot of this is about mindset and about how you approach people. And just one example for me is learning a few months ago around talking to people on the autistic spectrum, and the fact that when I ask the question, I then kind of delay for 6 seconds to enable that person to think about the answer and then respond. And that costs absolutely nothing, but actually enriches the two-way conversation. I don't know whether, Isaac, there's anything else that you wanted to add in terms of advice for businesses and low-hanging.
I just to say, like, there's loads of free resources out there that people can find online. For example, on the Purple Tuesday website, there's resources. And there's a lot of people like us who are willing to speak and help as much as we are able. So I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit and opportunities for businesses to jump on.
Yeah, definitely.
I might just add there, Charlene. So we've signed up to something called the Mindful Business Charter, which is really around how you have respectful relationships at work, with your colleagues, with your suppliers, with any of your clients. And so many of these are just really simple things about the way you communicate, being really open to communicating flexibly, the way you set up your meetings, thinking about accessibility issues in the way you're sort of living your day to day, through to how people take holidays and making sure that they're sort of properly unwinding during their holidays. So just thinking about people's mental health as well. There's so many things that are actually cost free. But having said that, we need to put budgets in as well, because we can't just do the low cost or free things. To do a proper disability inclusion strategy, there needs to be budget set aside, so that you can then put some of the other things that do cost money in place.
Yeah,
And do it properly as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you there. This one is around recruitment, and actually we have somebody in the chat that has said something which I think is linked to it as well. But recruitment for people with disabilities can be difficult, and we know that. So when and how is the best time to disclose a disability?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Because I was talking to someone recently about that, and it's like, yes, it's good to tell the employer about your disability, but then should we have to? Because on the employer's perspective, it's good that they do know so they can accommodate you. But then again, should they already have those things in place? So it's kind of like a 50-50. I don't know the right answer, because for me, I'd rather not tell someone I use a wheelchair. But if I did, then it may be more accommodating.
Yeah, I would switch the question around, Charlene, and I think it's, what is it that businesses have to do that will enable people to feel like they want to disclose? And that's about creating an inclusive, a supportive environment for their talented workforce who may happen to have a disability. And I think we have seen a number of examples recently where having a voice around mental health, for example, and being active around mental health from the senior leadership down to frontline staff has created an environment where people, and I was in an organisation where the chief exec had a, thank goodness it's Friday, session with all the staff talking about disability, about what they're doing and what they're going to do. And in that meeting, 5 individuals came forward and said, well, on that basis, I feel I'm able to disclose that I have had a hidden impairment for the last 12 years, 15 years, but today is the day I'm going to tell people. And the answer is, the more authentic people, if you can take your whole self to work, the better it is for you and the better it is for your organisation. So the answer to disclosure and recruitment, by the way, is the onus is on the organisation to create an organisation that is intent on bringing in talented people who may happen to have a disability and where reasonable adjustments. And I think this is where we just need to get to, rather than the difficult, tricky decision for individuals about whether they do or don't. I walk into a room, I can't hide it. It's blindingly obvious that I am, but for so many people, it is a really tricky question. And actually, it shouldn't be their decision. It should really be the environment that changes, that enables them just to be authentic.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's practice, and there's some fantastic examples coming through here in the chat of examples of things that organizations can do, and to support that recruitment process and the interview process, especially for those with those hidden impairments and difficulties that having an interview, for example, might be extremely daunting, and sharing examples of the questions prior to coming to the interview to give them a little bit of a chance to prepare and to reduce the levels of anxiety, etc. So absolutely. I've got a question here from somebody who couldn't actually attend today and posed it to me beforehand, and I just want to put it out there to the panel. So since legislation, how have you felt the disability movement has progressed since legislation was in place?
Yes, that's an interesting one, because I talk about a movement moving, and talk about the disability movement, whatever that might be. And I think as I was growing up, the real aim, the real determination was to see legislation that came in 1997, and then the Equality Act 2010. But I think, if I'm being honest about it, that was just a milestone, and not a lot really changed for me in my life. And you just listen to people like Isaac, and I need to be careful because there's people like Victoria Jenkins on the call and others, and I'll get told off for not mentioning everybody's name. But there is a new movement of disabled people where the expectations and the rights and the ability to lead an absolute full life is absolutely just there. And I think this new movement, by the way, and I saw a word flash up, allyship, which I really like, is about us all working together for the absolute same cause around creating an inclusive society for which we all play a role, for which disabled people, our lived experience is a huge raw material that we can contribute. But it only works if others play their part and play their role. And the reality is that legislation and has a role to play, but it's not going to change the mindset necessarily of society. And we just need to get to a place where difference is absolutely recognized, celebrated, and people just get on with their lives, and they just happen to be disabled. And I think starting to get there, there's a long way to go. And I talk about Disability Conversation 31, looking through the eyes of 12-year-olds, about my twins who are just coming up for 3, and looking at the issues that are of interest to 12-year-olds, which I can tell you is not employment, is not housing. But if we can work out what those issues are and build a social curriculum that makes those things accessible, then we start to see that the need for legislation disappears, because it's where society gets to and the principles of which we hold. And I think for me, that has to be the answer.
Yeah, brilliant. Just before we go to the reflections side of things, because I'm very conscious of time, I have one question here to the panel. What does the panel think about, wrong question. As an advocate, what can I do to encourage local businesses to get involved in Purple Tuesday? And what are the key asks to ensure it isn't tokenistic? I think that one's for you, Mike.
I was going to say, I wonder whether our ambassador should answer that, but no. I mean, first and foremost, Purple Tuesday, you need to make commitments, and they need to be genuine commitments, and they need to be commitments that you can deliver 365 days a year. So I remember in the early days of Purple Tuesday, people said, we'll create more disabled parking bays. And I said, but what about the following day? Oh, we'll go back to how it was. So, they have to be genuine. I would say to you, the real importance is organisations need to engage their staff in this movement and what they're doing. You have to give the staff the knowledge, the understanding, and equip them to really understand customers who may have different needs. And you need to listen to customers, in this modern day of instant real-time feedback, the lived experience, the raw material that we talked about, it's there for organizations to absolutely listen to and respond to and put in place the changes that will improve accessibility. And Purple Tuesday is really just the kind of initiative that corrals businesses, why would you not, as a business, want to increase your profits or your surpluses? Why, as a business, would you not want to increase your customer base? Why is it, as a business, that you would want to treat some people who might be relatives or friends or staff who work for you differently because they so happen to have a disability? And the answer is you wouldn't, you don't. So this is straightforward, and I would be saying, well, if you're not interested in Purple Tuesday, why? You know, I think you as an organisation need to have a look and think about yourself. This is something that everyone should be doing, and works at so many different levels.
No, absolutely. And as an action for anybody that wants to advocate, please just direct them. It's really simple to get involved. You just go to the website purpletuesday.co and register. And once you've registered, you get access to so many free resources to get you started on your own disability inclusion journeys. So now I'm going to hand over to Mike, who is going to provide some reflections on today's conversation before I bring the session to a close.
Thank you, Charlene. It's been absolutely brilliant, and I naively thought that I was going to be able to track all the comments and interactively play with all the comments, and just the stream of comments we've had that has made that impossible. But also, what you realise is, and what I strive for and always strive for, is this is about the voice of disabled people and the strength of disabled people. And you can just see from the comments the experience, the expertise, the knowledge, the frustrations, that if we come together, we can really make rapid change to change the conversation and make it a permanent change as well. And this is the important, we've got to make it sustainable, that these changes become permanent. You know, the number of people on here today indicates to me that this is an issue that means a lot to people and they want to see the change, and we can do it together. It also tells me, by the way, that we can never be complacent, and accessibility in all its forms needs to be right every time. And I'm really sorry if we have had with LinkedIn some accessibility issues today, and it hasn't been as an inclusive experience for everyone as it should be. And we will rectify that. But it's been hugely uplifting to see all the comments, to see the commitment, to listen to people like Harriet, to listen to people like Isaac, who really, through different streams and particularly social media, is able in real time to get really important messages out. And on behalf of Purple, I just want to thank everyone for working alongside us, being allies in what we're doing. This is about absolute collaboration. And I think I said to someone the other day, I said to a conference the other day, I just simply see myself as the conductor of the Purple Band, and I've got no arms, so I am waving my baton in my mouth, which is easy to do and which enables the orchestra still to play in time and in rhythm. So back over to you, Charlene, but I just wanted to thank everyone for their contributions today.
Thank you, Mike. And yes, and looking at the time, we now have just got a few minutes to wrap up. And I do have the great pleasure of thanking each of our panelists here today for getting involved, and most importantly, thanking you, our audience, our delegates, for contributing to a really meaningful conversation. And I hope that you all have been able to take something valuable away from today. And talking about takeaways, there's a few actions I suppose I would love you to be able to take away from us. Can I please encourage anyone who is listening, who is part of an organisation interested in improving the experience of people with disabilities as consumers, that disabled customer experience, then join us, join Purple Tuesday and sign up and get involved in our global movement. And as I mentioned earlier, it's just really easy to get involved. You go to the website purpletuesday.co and it's absolutely free to participate and get involved. And for any of you that is on the call that is interested in disability and accessibility training, ongoing training for your frontline staff and for your employees, then check out our Purple 365 program, and the link is there on the screen. We really do believe that education is fundamental to the engagement of staff, to customers and investors, and is fundamental for change to happen. So please check that out as well. And finally, follow us. Make sure you're following Purple Tuesday and make sure you continue to follow Purple. We will be releasing some fantastic free resources around how to take steps to improve the disabled consumer experience through our Purple Tuesday LinkedIn page. So please connect there, and you will be able to access that. On that, you will also be able to access the recording of today's session on our Purple Tuesday LinkedIn page. So please, you can direct that link to your colleagues so that they can follow us as well and get access to the information. And finally, keep in touch with Mike, Isaac, and Alwyn and the team, and how the disability conversation will continue to change and will continue to change at pace. So thank you for everyone today, and I hope you all have a good evening, good afternoon, and good rest of your morning, wherever you may be. Thank you.